Let's get personal here for just a moment. I'm going to ask each panelist about their personal journey, a moment in their life that maybe they've never told anybody about, how they discovered design and influenced their life. And I also, starting with Tony, would like them to explain their personal choice of footwear.
Well, I will talk about those. I love them.
Where did you get the...
I got them online.
Did you,
actually, Zappos.com.
Did you roll some guy in a restroom to get those?
I have multiple colors. No, I love flat-soled shoes. They're absolutely the best way to walk. At least in mine, and they have to be cool looking. At least I think they are. But no, really, where did I come to appreciate design? I think, I grew up in basements. I grew up in garages, building things, and you're always in just the bits and the, and screws and what have you. And it wasn't really until I went to work at a company called General Magic. And General Magic was the creators of the Macintosh, starting a new product, starting a new company that literally was the iPhone 20 years earlier. And that's when those guys who worked with Steve and gals who worked with Steve so intently on building the Macintosh, that's where I got to appreciate design in terms of not just the visual, but also the user interface, the interaction design. Those kinds of things were really, really impressed upon me by Bill Atkinson, Andy Hertzfeld, and Susan Kerr. That was really when I discovered it, and I kind of woke up and said, wait a second, I'm in California now. I'm not in Michigan anymore.
Yeah, this is great.
It was really fun.
Dave? Where are those boots from?
I'm from Montana, so and I went to school here in Colorado, so I had to wear the boots. Although I believe they're from Texas, Lucchese, which make the best cowboy boots. My grandfather, I think, is responsible for my love of design. I grew up in a small town in Montana, Helena. And my grandfather happened to be the vice president of the International Ski Federation, which is headquartered in Zurich. And so he would go to Switzerland almost every month, and he would bring back Braun clocks from Germany and Leica cameras, and sort of the Swiss design philosophy was everywhere in his house. And so I grew up going over to his house and sort of wondering how these products were created. And one of the products that was in his house that influenced me the most was the Macintosh. And I would say that the thing that led me down this path the most was HyperCard. So the story starts with my grandfather and ends with HyperCard, in that when I was, I think, in 3rd or 4th grade, I discovered HyperCard, which was a predecessor to the World Wide Web, and enabled me. It was a very simple but powerful tool. You opened up a computer and there was a screen that was blank, and you could draw on it, you could type text onto it, and then you could, and it was not just one card, it was a stack of cards, and you could take an element of that card and link it to another card and create games. You could create applications, and so I would spend my days after school, in elementary school, creating games, creating little applications using HyperCard. And I just fell in love with the iconography of Susan Kerr and the clip art of Bill Atkinson, and the fonts of that Steve Jobs and the team had chosen. And I think that sort of beget a love for designing pixels for my entire life, and not just pixels that are static but interactive,
dynamic.
And I think I've basically been doing that ever since. Yeah.
Mike?
Well, it's so funny you say that, because I was going to say exactly the same thing. HyperCard was absolutely elemental. The thing that was so amazing, on top building on what you said about it, it had this idea that you could have a lowest common denominator set of things, just a few things, and you could build anything with them. And that really was truly amazing.
Truly amazing.
And that really was the forerunner to the web. I remember when I saw Mosaic for the first time. I don't know if you remember where you were when you saw Mosaic for the very first time, but I do. I remember what time of night, what the weather was like, everything. And it was really just HyperCard connected on a network, right? And it's just, I totally agree. I think there's a whole generation of software designers especially that were deeply, deeply influenced by HyperCard.
My co-founder was, my co-founder was on the stage, he would say the same thing, and he was from northern British Columbia up near the Yukon, and happened to stumble upon HyperCard as well. So it, you know, permeates.
Yves, is your story different?
Yes, again. So I grew up in Lausanne, Switzerland, next to the IOC, which mostly was in the news, not for good design, but for diverse types of scandals and whatnot.
Doping. Doping?
Well, no, well, corruption, doping, all kinds of things.
Sports.
Sports. But so I grew up as not in a family of design, but it's something I decided to do when I was 15 years old. Went to a little drawing school in my hometown. Essentially, it was retirees that were learning to draw, how to draw flowers and other things, and teenagers, kind of, dropout teenagers that were in there. And I had just finished my baccalaureate, so I was 18 or 19, and instead of going to university, I went to drawing school, because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then I studied in Switzerland and the US, and I committed European betrayal by moving as a designer to Silicon Valley.
A vast wasteland.
Pretty much all of the interviews, or all of the journalists or my friends saw that as a moment of sheer insanity. But to me, there was a whole new territory that was being invented in the mid-90s in Silicon Valley. There was technologies, there were computers were taking home. All these products were becoming, all these technologies were becoming personal, and they were undesigned, unrefined in many ways, over-featured. But it seemed like I had, for me, it was a revelation. It was a new world where, as a designer, there was a big role to play, even though there were very few people playing it.